everybody. Welcome to the Abroaders Travel Podcast, your weekly meetup with thousands of entrepreneurs, hustlers, creators, nomads, ninjas, wanderers, and world changers, all seeking to build the skills and connections to live a life without borders. If you want to learn more about what we do or download our entire podcast archive, check out the website, abroaders.com. Happy Wednesday morning and welcome to another episode of the Abroaders Podcast. I'm Erik, checking in from Phoenix, Arizona, here with AJ in Austin, Texas. This is episode 170, and today we are going to be talking about And today we're going to cover some news and updates, including the return of the 100K Avios offer from British Airways, a Delta devaluation, and a couple of new routes that are coming in. And then for core content, I'm going to share an annual fee negotiation with the Aviator Red from Barclays. I thought this was a pretty interesting call because it's one that actually didn't go my way, at least not initially. And so I wanted to share that because I think there's some good takeaways that lots of you might be able to use to be able to manage your annual fees and pay less to those banks. And then also have a call with United that I want to share. That is the fabled United trick that helps you save $75 when you have to book a ticket close into booking. So we're going to get to that in just a little bit. But first, AJ and I, let's get to the news, man.
Yeah, man. How about it? Actually, you know what? Before we hop into this 100K offer, man, tell me a little bit about Phoenix. Have you actually done anything, or are you just kind of hanging out and catching up with Jim?
Honestly, today, so Jim's my dad, and today, so far, it's been pretty laid back. You know, to be honest, there's not a ton of stuff to do per se in and around the Scottsdale area. So we're just sort of outside of Phoenix. But this is like a pretty big town because there's a lot of other smaller cities that are right around sort of the greater Phoenix area. So you've got like Glendale and Tempe. But I haven't really had a chance to explore very much at all. For the most part, to be totally honest, I've just been kind of camping out and just taking a little rest and relaxation here by the pool and spending some time with my dad, which has been really nice.
Good stuff, man. All right. How about that? Well, let's dive into the news and updates, man. You want to kick us off with this 100K British Airways offer. Now, this is a little bit different from like the really old school 100K offer, like back when we were in Kalamazoo, like years ago.
Yeah. So I got this card back in 2013, maybe 2012 even. Yeah. And so originally it was like 100,000 points after spending 2,000 or 3,000 in 90 days. The last couple of years have been pretty consistent. The offer is back now. I believe this is almost exactly the same as it was last year when they came up and increased the offer from 50 to 100K. So usually this one sort of settles at 50K after 2,000 spend. Now we're back to 100, where you've got 50K after 3,000 spend in 90 days. And then you can earn an additional 25 for a 10,000 spend in the first year, and an additional 25 after that if you spend 20,000 in the first year of the account. So basically, you know, you've got a sort of short 3-month window to get that first 50K, and then depending on whether you spend 10 or 20,000 in the first full year of your account, you can add an extra 25,000 or 50,000 points. The one other benefit that's definitely noteworthy with this card is that they do offer a companion pass that can be used on paid first class tickets if you spend 30,000. So if you are a relatively high spender and are looking to go for the full 100K bonus and spend that 20K, you might consider spending the full 30K and taking advantage of their companion pass, especially if you do tend to buy business or first class tickets. That can be a really big value, but it is a lot of spend and there's some pretty high opportunity costs. I'd say on average, we probably see people get somewhere between 1.2 and 1.5 cents per point. So it's well below some of the other programs. But the thing I like about British Airways most is that it's very different in the fact that it's a distance-based chart. And so it's really nice for short distance. Like, in fact, I was just looking today, we're going to talk about Delta's devaluation in a little bit. And I was looking at ways to get from Sao Paulo to Rio, which is a super short flight. And that one's only 4,500 with Avios. But to book it on Delta was going to be 12,500. So there are some nice benefits with these points.
One thing in British Airways defense, as far as the value of their points goes, we've used them often for flights that didn't cost that much money. So the savings potential just wasn't really there. But it is possible if you can, because it's a distance-based chart, it is possible if you can find direct flights to do long haul and save money.
Yeah, well, just for an example, we got George coming to Austin in a couple of days. Actually, he's going to be here Friday this week. He's flying up from Sao Paulo on a ticket that we booked with United, I believe. And his return, he's headed to London after that, and that was an amazing deal. Typically, from the U.S. to Europe, you're going to pay at least 25. Air France is holding the line with 25 as the lowest, and typically you're going to pay 30 or even 40. And that ticket was just under 20 using British Airways Avios. So there's still some really good awards that are available if you pick your spots and find a direct flight.
Yeah, man, absolutely. All right, well, keeping things moving. Buying IHG points, there's a little bit of a promotion. This is today only, correct? So
yeah,
as far as
this one's just at 1:00. And by the way, don't wait. So this one it goes live at 1:00 p.m. today, and a lot of these deals go away within like the first 15 minutes. So this is kind of a thing. I don't know how popular this one was going to be, but this was the one that I thought was the most interesting of all the daily giveaways. But if you are interested, I'll let you, AJ, explain a little bit about how this one goes down. But if you're interested, you want to be there around 1 Eastern time because this might sell out pretty fast.
Yeah, so as far as the pricing goes, we've got 15,000 points for $89, 25,000 for $149, 50,000 points for $300, and then all the way up to 100,000 points for $589. So the approximate cost here is about 6 cents per point. And one thing, too, that you added in the notes here is to keep in mind that with a little bit of extra work, you can top up your account at any time at the rate of $70 per 10,000 points. So
yes, let me give you just a quick follow up on that little trick. So IHG has the points and miles. If you have 5,000 points or more, you can use cash and points, where you basically pay a cash fee and then redeem 5,000 points towards your hotel, which is something that I actually did at the Holiday Inn Express in Cape Town. And the one sort of caveat with that purchase, reserving a room with cash and points, is that if you do that and you decide to refund the room, they don't actually give you the money back. They give you points back. And so that's how you can effectively buy points at 7 cents per point, is you have to go through the trouble to make a fake reservation and then cancel it. And when you cancel that cash and points reservation, they don't give you your cash back. They give you points instead. Yeah. So that's sort of how it works. It's like they sort of treat it as like you're buying points to make the full points redemption. So something to keep in mind, but this is kind of an opportunity that should be super straightforward. I would say that that's kind of the average, like 6 cents per point is probably on average what you're going to get. So it's not something you should run out and like, oh, this is an amazing deal, it's going to sell out, I should get it. It's not that great of a deal unless you have a IHG hotel that you're planning on booking anyways. So not something for everybody to like go refresh their browser at 1 p.m. exactly. But I would say, the Intercontinental properties, which are part of IHG, are amazing. They're really, really nice hotels. And a lot of times they can be like $500 or $600 a night. So if you've got a property that you're interested in, IHG's got a super big footprint. There's a ton of hotels all around the world. And so this could be an opportunity to just simply, straightforwardly buy the points that you want to be able to book those redemptions, whether they're cash and points or straight up awards, and get the extra points you need without having to go through a whole bunch of extra work.
Sounds good, man. Moving on, we've got something interesting with Ukraine Airlines. So as always, there's a couple caveats here, but they will upgrade you from economy to business class if you find a better fare on most of their flights. So like I said, there are some caveats, but the premise here is they're promising that they have the lowest prices on their website. And if you find a better deal somewhere else, they will upgrade you to business class. So that's a really interesting proposition there. Some things to note. You've got to send them a screenshot within 4 hours. Currencies have to be the same as far as the comparison goes. The fare difference has to be a minimum of, I believe, $15. So if you find a flight that's like $1 cheaper, no luck. And then there's some exemptions. So flights are not eligible to Bangkok and to Beijing. And then the final caveat is flights to New York are only upgraded to premium economy. But nonetheless, like most of their flights, if you can find a better deal, if you can find it on some other search engine or other site for, $20, $30, which is not unreasonable to think, especially if you're considering more of a long haul flight. So this is definitely something interesting. I don't know how many of our listeners would have the opportunity to necessarily fly to Ukraine Airlines if they're intending on going to that part of Europe, or if they are in Europe. I mean, if you're in Europe and you're going to head somewhere, you could potentially position to Ukraine if you wanted to test it out. But I thought that was pretty interesting, and I appreciate that. And I see what they're trying to do. They're just trying to drive sales through their website. I mean, I know the commissions they pay aren't huge, but they're just trying to encourage people to book through them and cut out the middlemen of the online travel world.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that, again, like you said, it's probably not going to be super useful since there's not a ton of routes to the U.S. In fact, New York may be the only one at this point. But still, if you happen to be in Europe and you go to book a flight on Ukraine Airlines, seems to me the sort of thing where you can, say you're in Budapest or something like that, and you're looking for a return flight to the U.S., you head over to the Ukraine airline website and you head to Google Flights at the same time. If you see that there's a better deal on Google Flights for the same thing, grab a screenshot, book the one in economy, and send that over to them. Then you just bought a premium economy flight back home without having to, have to take much risk, since you've got that 24-hour cancellation window. So that's something that at least could be used for anybody that's in Europe to just, like, if you're booking that return flight to the U.S., give that a try. Or I assume vice versa. You could also do that from New York and have the premium economy upgrade. And I guess if you're connecting to any other place besides Bangkok and Beijing in Asia, that could be even better, getting an upgrade to business.
Yeah, for sure, man. Speaking of foreign airlines, we've got some news with Avianca Brazil, some more action between the U.S. and Brazil.
Man, I'm really excited about this. So first of all, in general, Brazilian airlines basically have no routes to the U.S. The dominant carriers in the U.S. to Brazil market are United, American, and Delta. Almost all the international flights are going to be those. And the good thing is that American partners with LATAM, Delta partners with GOL, and United partners with Azul. So if you do fly from the U.S. to Brazil, you've got ways to connect with the Brazilian national carriers to get to some of the smaller cities. Most of the main flights from the U.S. go to Rio or Sao Paulo. And so if you're looking to go to a place like Florianopolis or up north like Fortaleza, like you were earlier this year, it's important to be able to connect with those partners. But I'm just super excited because Avianca Brazil, this looks like step one out of more large-scale expansion that they're looking to do. They're opening up Miami to Sao Paulo. And so after June 23rd, that flight's going to be available. Keep in mind that if you're booking in business class, United is going to charge a little bit extra, just like they do with flights to Europe, where they charge $70,000 instead of $55,000 for business. So be on the lookout for that. However, just more availability in general, and especially if you're looking for economy, you're going to be able to have another additional flight that's a partner that's pretty much guaranteed to be at the saver level. So unlike Delta, which we're going to get to in a minute, that has just done some nasty stuff with their partners, United, if you're able to find one of these Avianca Brazil flights that's available, it's going to be available at the cheapest price and points that's out there. And that's great news for flyers that want to visit the marvelous city or any of the other ones around Brazil.
Yeah, man. I actually flew Avianca Brazil on my way back from Fortaleza, so Fortaleza to Sao Paulo, and it was a really good flight. I like Avianca. That was I've heard really good things about Avianca with my South American colleagues and friends, but that was the first time I actually got to experience it, and it was a really good flight. Now going back to what you're talking about Delta and the example with United, where booking a partner award is going to be a little bit extra in business class. We're seeing something similar with Delta. So Delta, they're claiming it's not a devaluation, but if we're going to be honest, it is a devaluation. And how it's working is on Delta redemptions with their partners, it appears that they're getting more expensive. A really obvious one, and this is from 1 mile at a time. So 1 mile at a time. Thank you for enlightening us with this. But Australia is one where I believe you used to be able to go there for 95,000 miles. And now it is, I believe, 110, 115 it's being priced at. So essentially what we're looking at here is Delta's partners, when you're trying to book with your Delta Sky Miles, the redemption rate is going to be a little bit worse. So it's going to cost you more miles The one piece of silver lining and a potential workaround here, and we still need a little bit more information, is if you can have a Delta operated flight be a part of your itinerary, you might find that you're paying the rate that you know and love, the lower price.
Yeah. So like basically, I think the example that I saw that made a lot of sense here is like if you book on Virgin Australia from LAX to Sydney, you're going to pay that higher inflated price that just changed recently. However, if you're able to connect on a Delta flight, basically just work some sort of Delta operated itinerary or Delta operated flight into the itinerary. So instead of LA, you could say go from, Atlanta to LA to Sydney. Just by including that Delta flight, you're potentially going to get the lower price. And at this point, we don't know if that's a glitch that they're planning on fixing, and pretty soon any itinerary that includes a partner is going to be more expensive, or if it just happens to be something where including Delta gets you that lower price. That remains to be seen.
Yeah, another example here is we've got a couple prices from JFK to London Heathrow direct. The Delta operated flight, 70,000. The Virgin Atlantic flight, 85,000. So just I guess keep that in mind. And if you're seeing funky prices on Delta trying to use your Sky Miles, give a look at toying around with potentially seeing if you can squeeze in a Delta operated flight.
Before we move on from that, I want to just kind of talk for a second about general Delta strategy, because I know lots of people out there have Delta points. They're relatively easy to earn. They're a transfer partner of Amex membership rewards. And we've seen Delta get progressively more frustrating for a lot of the routes that people are most interested in booking. And so, from our perspective, we've got a nice diversification, which is important so that you've got other options. But in the last 6 months, I've sort of defaulted to always checking Delta first, because if I can use Delta points at a good value, I want to burn them as fast as possible, because, it's just that the availability has been better almost across the board, including flights Brazil, South America and other places around South America to the U.S., vice versa, flights to Europe. Delta just, it's a little bit at a time. It's an extra 10K or an extra 15K. I just booked a trip back to Brazil. I've got some stuff to take care of in May, and I ended up for the first time that I can remember actually booking at 40,000 Delta points, even though I could have easily used 30,000 United or 30,000 American, just because it's so rare to find a good deal on Delta, and 40 seemed, sort of reasonable. So that's something to kind of watch out for. And I think that if they continue to do that, they're going to price themselves out of the market a bit and have some of the other frequent flyer programs. Definitely I would favor getting points with either of the other major U.S. airlines before I'd go after Delta points.
Yeah, man, you wonder as far as their calculations go, how much, there's people like us that understand this, but the majority of the people that are a part of their loyalty program just don't even have a clue. They have zero idea.
Well, today I had a conversation. So that ticket that I was telling you about, the 40,000, this was actually kind of a nightmare. They've had a rough week anyways, Delta, because Atlanta was subject to some nasty weather, and with flights getting canceled out of Atlanta and crews out of position, they ended up canceling more than 3,000 flights. So I booked the ticket at 40K, and I booked to Sao Paulo, even though I need to get to Rio. And I booked it online because I was afraid that 40K would just be gone within a few days. And it was. In fact, when I went back to look at it today, it was at 62,000. So I made the right choice to book it. But my game plan was that I was going to lock in that ticket to Sao Paulo first and make sure I got that 40K price, and then call Delta to make a change. Well, for the entire week, there was like a 3-hour wait to make a phone call to Delta. And I finally got through today. And I try to use the sort of traditional logic of, well, my ticket was booked at 40,000 points. That's sort of the saver award level. And all I want to do is add a short flight on your partner goal that goes from Sao Paulo to Rio. And the person just wasn't having any of it. And I didn't have sort of the award chart to fall back on and say, oh, well, this award is supposed to cost 30 if saver awards are available. I just didn't have that. And she was like, well, it says right now it's 62. You want to change it for an extra, 22,000 miles? And so, I think there's a lot tougher.
Don't insult me with that garbage, lady.
she was nice about it, but that's just how, that's how they're pricing things. So, keep an eye on that. And definitely, if you've got Amex points, consider looking at Air France and other partners that have options. Air France can book on Delta at better prices. So just be aware that Delta is leading the charge in devaluing points.
So, man, a lot of people have heard talk about this Hyperloop, this really fast kind of quasi train that has been all theory up to this point pretty much, but it looks like we're getting a little bit closer to actually making this a reality. So per the points guy, recently this past week, Hyperloop One, they met with the policymakers in DC. So and they proposed, I believe it is 11 different routes or different networks. So to give you an example, as far as the Hyperloop goes, from Boston to Providence, from LA to San Diego, Miami, Orlando, Seattle to Portland. Those are a few examples, which surprised me because I remember one of the original ones everyone talked about was LA to San Francisco. But it'll be really interesting to see how this develops because this could revolutionize the way that we travel, in the United States, because these things go fast. They're designed to go up to 800 miles an hour. And to give you an idea, your cruising speed, when you're at your cruising altitude going about as fast as the plane goes is around 500 miles an hour. So faster than a train. And man, I don't know, this is an exciting possibility. The technology's actually been around for a long time, but for a bunch of different reasons, it's just never gotten the traction, and no one's had the guts to actually test one out.
Yeah, for a little bit of extra trivia about the whole Hyperloop idea. So Elon Musk did not come up with the idea in general. Like somebody else, the name escapes me of who actually put
Jacques
the first.
Fresco was talking about this. It was either the 60s or the 70s, man. The guy was
a long time ago.
He was just ahead of his time.
But at that point it was sketches. And Elon Musk took like that idea and made a working paper that essentially said like, what we need to do is create a tube that's a vacuum so that there's no air resistance. And then we'll put these pods that have passengers in it, and we'll shoot them through this tube at 800 miles an hour and get them to their destination super fast. So that's the idea. If you haven't heard about this, I'd highly recommend you check it out in the show notes and just Google around, because the idea makes you feel like you're already at the beginning of the future. I'm super excited, man. I know it's potentially expensive. I think the reason that the LA to San Francisco one didn't work is that they had a lot of trouble getting the rights along I-5, the freeway that runs along, the eminent domain stuff of like having to displace houses or other property that was privately owned to be able to build the track. So that's one of the issues they're facing. But they built a test track. So the reason that this whole thing that you mentioned with the proposal of different cities pairs is being evaluated, and they're going to try and pare it down to a few from the list, is that they built like a half a mile test track, and it works. The technology works. They just got to find the investors and actually create this. Boy, it'll be interesting if in a couple of years we're talking about loyalty programs. Imagine if somebody decides to one-up Chase with their Amtrak transfer partner and somebody becomes the Hyperloop transfer program.
Oh man, it would make perfect sense. I mean, the loyalty business is a big business. There's a lot of money, so I don't know why they wouldn't do it.
All right. So before we get to the core content today, I've got one listener question and then a couple of quick reminders of deals that are ending soon. So Austin wrote in and asked about a trip that he booked and which frequent flyer program he should credit the flight to for earning points. And so just to recap, when you book a ticket and you actually pay for it, a lot of times you have many options for the airlines that you want to collect points with. So in this case, he booked a flight on Qatar Airways, which is a member of the One World Alliance. And he was just checking in to see if it made sense to credit those miles to American Airlines. And Austin's question turned out to be really perfect for this example, because there's tends to be a really big difference depending on which program you credit to, how many miles you're going to earn. And so I'm going to link a quick thing in the show notes that sort of shows my answer and the way that you actually can check and make the comparison. But the bottom line is that it all comes down to the fare booking code. So if you book an economy ticket, there's as many as 10 or even 15 different designations within economy. So there's economy M, there's economy X, there's economy R, there's all these different letters. And based on which letter you booked, number one, the price of the ticket will vary. But number two, the number of miles that you get for that ticket depend on the letter that's associated with your airfare. And so in Austin's case, there were a bunch of economy fares that actually earned 50% of miles flown with American Airlines, and they earned 100% of miles flown with British Airways. So in general, I would say if you have a choice of earning, 5,000 American miles for your flight or 5,000 British Airways, I'd probably take American. But if it's only 2,500 AA points and you could earn 5,000 British Airways Avios, you definitely want to go for the Avios. So anyways, take a look at the link in the show notes. I've got the link for the chart for British Airways and American. But generally, if you've got this question, the easiest thing to do is to just type earn American miles on Qatar Airways flights, earn British Airways miles on Qatar Airways flights, and that'll pull up the links within the first couple of results to give you just the chart of what percentage of miles flown you're going to earn. And so thanks a ton, Austin, for writing in with that question, and I hope you were able to pick the right program based on the type of ticket you earned. Okay, so to wrap it up, we've got a couple of quick reminders. We've got a few things that are ending this Friday. Number one is an Amex offer for Air France. If you buy an Air France ticket and spend at least $1,000, you can get 20,000 membership rewards. Again, this is an Amex offer, so to activate this, you need to go into your American Express account and activate the card. So not all Amex cards have this, but could definitely be worth it. That expires Friday. Also, the 500 free Singapore Airlines KrisFlyer miles when you create a KrisFlyer account. AJ and I talked about that last week on the show. Should take just a couple of minutes to create your account, and definitely worth it to get a few extra miles in there. And then last but not least, just a reminder that Americans reduced mileage awards that are available if you have the Barclays Aviator Red card and the Citi Platinum Select and a few different other cards that earn American miles. They've got reduced mileage awards where you can pay less than the normal rate for domestic flights. And the list for April through July of 2017 is now out. So we'll have a link for that in the show notes as well. AJ, anything else, man, before we jump into core content?
I guess we should probably talk about it, and everyone probably knows what we're about to talk about, and this is this United thing. I just wanted to touch on it. I guess an important thing to say is I do not have all the information about this. I don't know enough details to have a really, really, really strong opinion, but we can speak in a hypothetical world where this whole situation where they let people board a plane and then they forcefully removed somebody from the plane. From our vantage point, it seems really bad. You let somebody board the plane. So to give people context, if they haven't seen this, United had a flight that was overbooked, and they had some of their own people, some United personnel, maybe flight crew that needed to fly or wanted to fly standby. And they offered, $400, $800, and nobody took them up on it because everyone wanted to get home or they wanted to get where they're going. And then they let the plane board. So people board the plane, and then they end up calling the cops to remove somebody from the plane. So it just seems absolutely absurd that they allowed this man to board the plane, and the police that removed him were not gentle with him.
It was really physical.
They dinged him up pretty good. The word on the street is that this guy was a doctor and he wanted to be on the flight because he had some patients to take care of when he got back for the next day, and just a really messy situation, and not a very good look for United. Delta's got to be thrilled because their whole snafu with all the the cancellations and the 5-hour hold times is being overshadowed by United beating up one of their passengers and forcefully removing him after he paid, and they allowed him to board the flight. So
that's the glory of the 24-hour news cycle, is that your screw up is only going to be on the top of people's attention for so long before something else happens. The only thing I have to add to this story is that like in this situation, obviously, if you're misbehaving and the flight attendants, you're drunk or you're being belligerent, of course you're going to get physically forcefully removed from the flight. But this was just simply a scenario of like they sold too many tickets. And I think the situation was that they had a crew that had to be in that city because another flight was going to get canceled if they didn't show up. So the United people that were riding standby essentially on this flight had to position to Lexington or wherever the flight was going so that they didn't have to cancel a flight full of people. At the end of the day, they were protecting the people on the other flight, But why United couldn't say, hey, you know what? We're going to give $1,000 in compensation. Or we're going to give $1,500 until somebody says, yeah, I'll volunteer to not be on this flight instead of dragging somebody off.
Well, the timetable I heard proposed, or the timetable that I heard was that with the United crew, so they knew that they overbooked this flight. From what I heard, that the United crew that was trying to get to the other city so they could service that other plane and do all that stuff, they had plenty of time to rent a car and drive. I think it was around a 5 or 6 hour trip if they just rented a car and went. And when it was all said and done, I think they would have been there with plenty of time had they done that. But they
the one thing about that is that they have really strict rules. Like whoever's driving, isn't eligible to be a crew member. Like, I don't understand though, like still United could have had somebody else that wasn't on the flight potentially drive them, but there's like super strict federal law about how much time you can be doing something, how much break time you have to have essentially before your flight. You don't want somebody that's been, doing what we did from New York to Flint last year and then getting there being your safety officer on the flight. But either way, man, super crazy scenario. And hopefully, they can learn an important lesson there and just suck it up and offer. I mean, the amount of damage financially that this has done to United, like just give people $2,000 to take another flight. Like enough people are going to say yes. They definitely lost more than $8,000 by having this horrible PR, just catastrophe come down.
Yeah, man. Agreed on that.
All right. So we're going to head over to core content here. I've got 2 call recordings to share with you guys. I hope you enjoy. AJ, I will see you back in Austin tomorrow afternoon. Take care, man. Thanks for joining me.
All right. Sounds good, man. You too.
So the first call that I want to share with you guys today is what lots of people know as the United close-in booking fee trick. And basically, United charges a close-in booking fee for anybody that books an award ticket within 21 days of departure. Now, this fee, I believe, is waived for top-tier elite status, but for most of us, especially those who earn the majority of your points through rewards credit cards, the waiver for that fee is not going to be available. And so this trick can save you $75 per person per ticket when you book close to departure. So the basic premise here is that I was headed down to Rio de Janeiro for Carnival, and I unfortunately did not manage to book my ticket far enough in advance to naturally avoid that close-in booking fee. I think I tried to book the ticket for the 26th of February, and I did that maybe the 15th of February. So not enough time. And so the trick works like this. Instead of booking the 26th that I actually wanted, I found a similar itinerary from Austin to Rio de Janeiro on the 14th of March. And the nice thing is that as long as you are more than 7 days away from departure, the airlines are required by law to give you 24 hours to book, to make a change to your itinerary with no fees. So it's totally free to cancel or to change your ticket. Now, the United trick comes in because United doesn't actually assess the $75 close-in booking fee if you move a ticket that was booked more than 21 days in the future up to within 21 days. Typically, these calls to make a change take somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes, so it's not completely free in terms of your time, but it can save you $75 per person. And so I cut down this call to just try and share some of the key points and sort of give you a little bit of guidance so you can manage one of these conversations yourself and hopefully save that fee for you and your travel companions. All right, let's have a listen.
How can I help?
So I'm calling because I just booked a little while ago a reservation for Rio de Janeiro. And I realized just a second ago that there's actually an available seat much earlier, which would be much better for me. And I think I'm still within the 24-hour cancellation window. So I wanted to see if you could change my flight to the earlier date.
All right, let me double check that one. So your flight is from Austin going to Rio de Janeiro on March 14th.
Correct.
Okay, what modification do you want me to do here?
So I just want to change the date to February 26th.
February 26th
Yes.
instead of March 14th.
Correct.
Do you want the same exact flight number that you have on March 14th?
One quick note about the free change within 24-hour rule is that it isn't just about changing the dates. You can actually change the routing of your flights or even the destination, and you can also cancel the flight. So in this particular case, I decided to move up my first flight so that I could take advantage of the Centurion Lounge at Houston International and have a couple of extra hours to be able to sit and enjoy the lounge instead of running between gates to be able to make a 50-minute connection. So just keep that in mind as well, that anytime within the 24-hour period, even if you're not trying to avoid a close-in booking fee, you can always make adjustments to those award bookings. And again, the only criteria here is that the bookings have to be made more than 7 days before departure originally. Otherwise, you don't always have that 24-hour window.
Would it be possible to take a slightly earlier flight? I'm just a little bit worried about maybe missing the connection. Would it be possible to book on flight 6:30 that leaves Austin at 5:26?
Yes, still open.
Okay.
Okay, great. So shall we go ahead now and change your flight?
Yes, please.
Give me 1 to 2 minutes, Mr. Erik, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I'm not collecting anything since this is within 24 hours.
Wonderful. Great.
Just keep that same confirmation number.
Very good. Thank you so much for your help. I appreciate it.
Anything else that I can help?
No, that's all. Have a great night.
Have a great night. Thank you so much for calling. Bye-bye.
All right, so the next call that I want to share with you guys is my Aviator Red MasterCard from Barclays annual fee negotiation. So we've talked about this quite a bit before, but this card has an $89 annual fee, and like most points and miles enthusiasts, I do not want to pay that fee if I can at all avoid it. So I'm going to share the audio from my recent call with them to see if I can get that annual fee waived.
All right, and how can I assist you today with your Aviator MasterCard?
Yeah, so I'm calling because I saw the annual fee of $89 posted just recently, and I don't think I'm interested in keeping the card open. If I need to pay the fee, just kind of in a tough financial spot right now, and so I'm thinking about closing the card. But I'd like to keep it open if there's anything you guys can do to help. So I just wanted to see if there were any offers or anything like that that I might be able to take advantage of, so I don't have to close the account.
All right, okay, Mr. Pickett, just let me see if you're eligible for a fee waiver. 1 moment, please.
Okay, thanks so much.
You're welcome.
All right, so the process so far has been pretty typical. Most of the time, the frontline rep needs to check and verify some information about your account. And at this point, they're usually checking a couple of different things. So number one, they want to see and try and assess what your value as a customer is to the bank. So most banks have some sort of process where they're going to look through and see how much you've spent on the card, how often you're using it, how long you've been a card member, how many times you've actually paid the fee. So typically, you'll get put on hold, and they'll come back and give you an answer. And fortunately, the answer for most of these types of calls is going to be that they will waive the fee. And the reason for that is really simple. The credit card companies spend a lot of money to acquire you as a customer, and waiving that fee in order to be able to keep you is probably something that they're willing to do so that they don't have to acquire you as a customer again or acquire somebody else to replace you. Now, this wouldn't be a very educational podcast if we just pretended like it always goes your way, and no matter what, they always just waive the fee whenever you ask them to, because unfortunately, that's not the reality. And in my case, the Aviator Red is one of those cards that's just been basically sitting in my drawer ever since I earned my sign-up bonus. And so when she did go to check my account, she saw two things. One, that I hadn't put hardly any charges on the card, and number two, that they had also waived the card last year when I called and asked for a fee waiver. And so in this particular situation, she came back and said, no, unfortunately, you're not eligible for a waiver. Now, at this point, you generally have two options. One is to just accept that you don't have a waiver and close the card, and the other is to ask for a supervisor. And it is important to know that sometimes the supervisor has totally different options, or maybe will evaluate your account a little bit differently than the frontline rep. So if you really like the card and potentially want to keep some of the benefits, this might be something that's worth an extra 5 to 10 minutes to see if somebody else with more authority can potentially do that waiver manually instead of just clicking whatever they have in their system. In my case, because number one, I did waive this fee the year before and didn't really use the card much at all. And I also have another card, in this case, the City Platinum Select, that has a lot of benefits that overlap with the Aviator Red. I decided that I was in fact going to close the card. And so the next part of this call is to show you guys what you should always do in the event that you do decide to close a credit card to protect your credit. After paying your bills on time, which is the most important factor, the next two are credit utilization, how much of your available credit you're using, and the average age of your accounts, so how long your accounts have been open. And so the strategy that I run through next is designed to protect your credit utilization. In other words, the more credit you have with a bank, the better your credit score looks because typically you use a smaller percentage of that, and that looks less risky to them. So anytime you plan to close a card, one of the options is to see if you can move your line of credit to a different account that you have with the same bank. And that solves the problem of credit utilization because you're able to basically apply that leftover credit to a new account or to one of your existing accounts. And so that helps preserve that credit line and protect your credit utilization. Now, the average age of account factor is one that does get hurt slightly when you close a card. And so the thing that you want to keep in mind there is if the card that you're considering closing is one of your oldest accounts, you want to be careful if you don't have a very long age of accounts. I'd say typically 5 years as an average is a pretty good place to start. If you're under that mark, you may consider keeping cards open to avoid hurting that average age of account. But overall, it's only worth 15% of your credit score. And so a change by closing one card is unlikely to cause any significant damage to your score. If you are in a situation where the card you're thinking about closing is a significant portion of your total account history with all credit cards, you may want to consider seeing if you can convert that card into a no annual fee card. In other words, you keep the credit line and you convert the card into one that doesn't cost you money each year. And that's probably the best option. But in this case, I opted to just move my credit line and close the account. Now, there was one additional wrinkle in the process this time that's worth bringing to your attention. Typically, when you go to close a card, you're entitled to a refund of the annual fee as long as you close the account within 30 to 60 days of the fee being billed to your statement. And if you're not sure what that time window is, you should just ask like this.
What's the timeline on getting a full refund for the fee? I know that it billed last statement because it just processed a payment for it.
Yeah, it's 60 days.
Now, it varies by bank. Barclays, in this example, is a bank that allows 60 days from the time that your annual fee is billed. And so the reason that I bring this up is that the agent informed me that there was a technical difficulty on the day that I was calling and that she wouldn't actually be able to close my account. Now, I was cutting it close to that 60-day deadline. And if I was not able to call back within the first 2 days of the following week, I was going to be outside of that window. So if you are in a position like that, always make sure that you ask the representative to note your account.
Would you mind just noting my account that I called in about this today too, and that there was a technical reason that we couldn't process the closure?
Yeah.
Just so I've got that. I'm not sure when I'm going to be able to call next week. So.
All right, very good. It's there on the account.
Okay, so fast forward 2 weeks. Now I am outside of the 60-day fee refund window for canceling a card. So I'm going to start out by asking the rep if it would be possible to move my line of credit over from my Aviator Red card to my Barclays Arrival Plus card. And she's also going to check in with her manager, who's going to approve waiving the fee, even though I'm outside of the 60-day cancellation window.
I was wondering if it would be possible to just move any of my line of credit over to my Arrival card.
Yeah, we can do it. And do you want to move the whole credit line over, or just?
Yeah, the whole one would be excellent if at all possible, because I do plan to keep using the Arrival card. I think that just makes more sense for me right now, but it'd be great to be able to keep that credit if you guys can do that for me.
I'm going to advise that Karen did go ahead and adjust is going to adjust the annual fee for you.
Okay, great.
And then I'm going to call over to our credit team now to see if they are able to move your credit line in just a second here.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, hi again. My name is Jesse. I'm with the credit department. I'll go ahead and assist you with that request. So from what I understand, you want to go ahead and close out your Advantage Aviator line and get that transferred over to your Arrival line. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, I can definitely go ahead and do that for you.
Wonderful. All right, thank you so much. Really appreciate your help.
No problem. You're welcome. You have a good day.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, so that is the process of closing a card by moving your credit line to another card with the same bank. Now, it is important to know that generally to do this, you need to have the same type of card. In other words, either business or personal, to be able to move a credit line from one to another. So you generally have to have another personal card with the same bank, in this case, Barclays, to be able to do that. Again, probably the better overall process to protect your credit is to downgrade the card to a no annual fee product if that's available, which many cases it is. And again, for more than 80% of the calls that I've personally made, and a large number of the ones that folks like you guys have reported back to us, a lot of times the banks just waive this fee flat out and you don't have to go through this work. Do keep in mind this whole process probably takes around 15 to 20 minutes. Mine was a little bit longer in this case just because I had to call back a second time to finalize things, but it's well worth it to protect your credit and continue to be eligible to earn big sign-up bonuses and generate tons of valuable points from your regular spending. I hope you guys enjoyed this week's show, and if you'd like more core content like this with specific examples of calls and negotiations with the banks and the airlines, please let us know by shooting an email to support@abroaders.com. Hey Broaders, don't be shy. Hop over to the website and join our email list for exclusive travel hacking content. If you like what we're up to, the best way you can support the show is by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. Lastly, we would love to hear from you, so send your show feedback to Erik or AJ at abroaders.com. We will see you next week.